Well, we're doing love and marriage. Love and marriage. What a woman, what a man wants in a woman. And I'm going to do an acrostic this morning, as was done last week when you have to get the facts. Here, how to make a house work, and we're going to take the word house, the first letter from all the letters from house, H-O-U-S-E, and each letter will bring us to a point that will help us understand what a man wants in a woman. Proverbs 18:22 says, "He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord." The first thing that a man wants from a woman is honor. Honor. Ephesians 5:33. "Let each one of you love his wife as himself." And notice this next line. "And let the wife see that she respects her husband." One of the most powerful motivators a man receives is when he hears his wife say, "My husband," and then she goes on to say, "My husband is," and some positive statement comes out of that. And that's a real encouragement to men. If ladies would learn to say that, you'd be surprised at how much your husband would respond to that and want to do more and more things that would be pleasing to you. Men thrive on honor. It's just the way they're made. Give a soldier a ribbon, a sports personality a trophy, and it makes all the difference in the world. When my brother was here, living in Millville, we had a service to honor veterans. And I remember that now Congressman Van Drew presented him with a plaque to honor his service during the war in Vietnam. And when I went to his house this last week, there on the wall of that humble establishment was that plaque. I remember him walking down the aisle after all those years in Vietnam where you felt almost forgotten. And then he walked down here with a proud stance as he was presented with that plaque. Men need to be honored, and they need to be honored in little things. If a man hangs a picture on the wall, he waits for his wife to get home, and he waits to see if she notices anything. If she doesn't, he says something like this: "Notice anything?" And then, of course, the wife is going crazy looking around, and he's hinting, and she finally sees the picture. Now, here's what a wise wife says. "You know what, hon? I don't think there's a picture hanger in the world that can match you." It's the way guys are wired, and they need to be honored. And honor begins in the heart. When a wife honors her husband, it comes out of her heart. Now, the opposite of honor is dishonor. Never speak negatively of your husband to other people. Do you think they're going to fix it and solve the problem? No. That's why I keep warning and warning. When I read Facebook articles that a wife writes about her husband, I cringe. What hope do you have that your life will be all that it should be if you publicly criticize your husband? And so be very, very careful there. See, a wife who disrespects her husband disrespects the Lord. And a wife who disrespects her husband also teaches her children that it's okay to be disrespectful and dishonor authority. So be careful. Honor is a very important thing in a man's life. Take away his honor, and you will find that the relationship will crumble. There's something else that a man wants in a woman, and that's outward appearance. That's a very important thing. Proverbs 31:22, "Her clothing is fine linen and purple." In other words, this gal in Proverbs knew how to clothe herself. And gals do this all the time. My wife will say, does this look all right? And I'll say, yeah. Next thing I know, she's got another blouse on. How's this one look? And I'm thinking to myself, we may have to go through 2 or 3 more. And so be aware. And men like that, incidentally. I like that my wife wants to look her best when she's with me. That's a wonderful thing. Revelation 21:2, and I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride. Notice this, as a bride adorned for her husband. Do you remember the day you got married? I do. It's been almost 49 years, but I remember it. I remember looking down the aisle and seeing my bride. She was dialed up. Why? Why? Well, because she was coming to be someone's bride. And weddings, the bride looked great. It goes through a lot of effort for him. Notice it's adorned for the husband. And that's the idea, for him. Your husband wants a woman who still wants to look nice for him. That's a really important thing. Now, we know, of course, in saying that things happen. I'm a little older looking than I was when she walked down that aisle. I had beautiful hair. That's true. But reality is, I still look pretty much the same. And she looks pretty much the same. Outward appearance, maintaining your appearance is important. Someone said, soon after our last child left home for college, my husband was resting next to me on the couch with his head in my lap. And I carefully removed his glasses. You know, honey, I said sweetly, without your glasses, you look the same. You look like the same handsome young man that I married. Honey, he replied with a grin, without my glasses, you still look pretty good too. But the reality is, all he wants is that the girl that he's with looks like the girl that he married. Don't neglect yourself. Don't be careless. And be careful. If I have a picture in my office of my wife and I on our senior prom. Do you know, if you looked at that picture today, you would have no trouble telling who it is. And that's what we should be doing. We should attempt to be the same person that we were when we were married. Given, of course, age and time, but we should take care of ourselves. But you might say something like this, whoa, doesn't the Bible say man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart in 1 Samuel 6:7? Yes, but your husband is not the Lord. What attracted him was not how poorly you dressed or how unkept you are. And that's important. Now, let me say something to the husbands in this. Husbands, if you expect your wife to care for herself and look respectable, don't walk around with your stomach hanging over your belt. Take care of yourself. Balance out your life. A middle-aged husband was getting irritated with his wife's complimentary opinion of a young Hollywood celebrity. He chided, yeah, look, take away his money, take away his good looks, and his muscular body, and what do you have? To which the wife said, you. Take care of yourself. It honors your partner. I was surprised as I was studying how many times the Bible uses the word beauty or beautiful, speaking of women. About 84 times. That's a lot. And when you read some of the passages, it'll amaze you. Esther chapter 2, verse 7, the young woman had a beautiful figure and was lovely to look at. Who would expect to find that in the Bible? But there it is. Job chapter 42, verse 15, and in all the land there was no woman so beautiful as Job's daughters. Now, of course, they didn't live in the time my daughters did, because there'd have been a match. You know? Song of Solomon, chapter 1, verse 15. The man is speaking. Listen to what he says. Behold, you are beautiful, my love. Behold, you are beautiful. Your eyes are like doves. Incidentally, let me say something about eyes. Women, learn to use your eyes. You'll be surprised how wonderful eyes are when you say to your husband, wow, that was really good. Not, wow, that was, wow. And he'll look at those eyes, and his heart will stir. It's just how men are put together. And so use those eyes, and don't be afraid of doing what the Scriptures say. Now, there is a caution here. Beauty can be misused, can it? There's a lot of people that are beautiful physically, but emotionally, spiritually, they're very small. Don't be like that. Have the balance. Be beautiful. Exercise as much as you can concerning yourself. I was always amazed at how busy beauty parlors are, hairdressing and nails and all these things. That's great. But it's got to be also on the inside. Listen to what Proverbs says in chapter 11, verse 22. Like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman without discretion. Wow. So it's not just beauty, it's inward beauty that has to be expressed. But incidentally, when you're beautiful on the inside, it shows all over. There's something wonderful about people who are beautiful on the inside. It's just a radiance that shines from them. And we need to be beautiful on the inside. Proverbs 31:30. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. That's a wonderful thing. I remember when I was dating, my wife said to me, when I asked her out for a date, sure, I'll meet you at church. She had no idea that one day I would become a preacher. She just felt that was an appropriate place to meet your date. And it turned out okay. And so, be careful. Use not only take care of yourself, but take care of your heart. Make sure your heart is right with God. 1 Peter 3, verse 3, do not let your adorning be external, the braiding of hair, the putting on of gold jewelry, or the clothing you wear. Now, what he's not saying don't wear clothing, don't wear jewelry. What he's saying is that's not all the substance of who you are and should be. But he goes on to say in verse 4, let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. And so, honor your husband. And deal with the outward appearance. Next thing that a man is looking for in a woman is unity. In Thornton Wilder's play, The Skin of Our Teeth, the character, Mrs. Albatross, says to her husband, I didn't marry you because you were perfect. I married you because you gave me a promise. She takes off her ring and looks at it. And then she looks again at her husband. And she says, that promise was made up, that promise made up for your faults, and the promise I gave you made up for mine. Two imperfect people got married, and it was the promise that made the marriage. There are no perfect spouses or perfect husbands. There are very good spouses and husbands, but no perfect. We're all human and all flawed. But we made a commitment to love and honor, and we need to keep that commitment. Unity is important to a man. Song of Solomon, chapter 2, verse 16. My beloved is mine, and I am his. That's important. I belong to you, you belong to me, we belong to each other. Men and women don't necessarily find the same activities as relaxing, and so we have to learn how to have unity and still realize that we're different. They did a little study some years ago on men and women, and they found out that here's the three most relaxing things for a woman. Taking a long bath, shop for clothing, and call a friend and talk. Interesting, none of these made the men's list. No. Now, I go shopping with my wife because I want to be with her. But when I go shopping, here's how I do it. I need a new tool. I know right what aisle that tool is at. I'm going to go in, I'm going to buy that tool, going to get the price I can get, and get out of there. My wife goes shopping. What are you getting, hon? I need a new sweater. Okay? So we go in the store. Oh, before we get to sweaters, there are about 200 items that we have to pause at. Have you ever noticed that? I said, hon, didn't we come for sweaters? Yeah, the store's open another hour. I mean, it's just different. And here's what I said years ago. If I want to spend time with my wife, I'm willing to walk through the store. And that's important, that you realize we're different. But I want my wife to participate in some of the things I like too. And so I want to be able to participate in things that she likes. Now men, they want to buy a book, go to an expensive restaurant, or buy something for a hobby. And I can tell you, in terms of for the hobby, be careful. I once had to counsel a guy who spent so much on his hobby that they were financially struggling. And guys and can go out and spend a lot of money on a gun to go hunting or a golf club. And then they'll say to the wife, we can't afford that. No, you can. Be willing to make some sacrifices. Both of you decide and be wise about it and realize you're different. Now, incidentally, let's say that your husband's interested in sports and you're not interested in sports. I'm not interested in sports, but let's say you had a husband that was interested in sports and he watches a lot of sports. What do you do with that if you're not interested? Here's how to get interested. Start researching the lives of the players. Are they married? Do they have children? Are they going through marital difficulty? All of a sudden, life will take on it. It'll be like watching Days of Our Life. It'll take a different angle, and you'll be surprised how things will change. But here's the truth in unity. A husband must always get the idea you are for him, that you are on the same team. That's what the husband needs to know, that you are with him. Martin Luther said, let the wife make her husband glad to come home, and let him make her sorry to see him leave. I was just away for a few days from my wife. The minute I get on the plane, I start missing her. I realize I'm going in the air, and I won't see her. Now, fortunately, we live in a new age. When I first started dating my wife, we had telephones called phone booths. Any of you remember the phone booth? And I would collect all my coins, because when you went overseas, it was $3 for a minute or so, and I would collect all my coins. I'd have everything figured out that I wanted to say. I love you, I love you, I love you, 1 minute, time's up. I love you, bye. And we would do these kind of quick calls. Today we have some advantages, but we still should miss one another. Just getting on a trip for 2 days. Man, I can't wait to talk to my wife. How often you think, oh, I wish my wife were with me. And that's how it's supposed to be in marriage, where you desire to be with your marriage partner. Matthew 19:5. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate. And then it goes on to say in Ephesians, submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. I remember once I was having lunch with a preacher, I would say an extremely fundamentalist preacher, and he said, oh, brother, what did you preach on this Sunday? And I said, my sermon was, why husbands submit to your wives. Paul's hit. His fork dropped. He almost died on the spot. Where in the Bible did you get that? I said Ephesians 5:21, submitting to one another out of the reverence for Christ. There's a mutual submission in marriage as well as a logical submission. But there ought to be that idea of surrendering our rights and yielding to one another because we love each other deeply from the heart. There is another kind of submission where he says in verse 22, wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is head of the wife, even as Christ is head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior. Now notice this though. Now as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. But listen to the role of the husband. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. I've never met a wife that had struggle submitting to a man that would treat her with godliness. Never. Because you love your wife like Christ loved the church. And it's who gave himself for the church. But notice the role of the husband in this. Ephesians 5:26, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word. The husband has a creative role. Many times the wife becomes what the husband creates. And so while you want something from your wife, remember you are to give something to your wife. You are to give her your best. You are to love her to the max. You are to be gentle and kind and gracious. And you will find that there isn't a wife I've ever met that says, I can't submit to this guy. He's so kind. And so this is how God has ordained it. Honor, outward appearance, unity. Now here's the next one. Sexual fulfillment. Sexual fulfillment. Some women think that all men think about is sex. I'm here to tell you that's not true. But men do think about sex. Do you think they got married to be celibate? I can't wait to get married. You sleep over there, I'll sleep over here. This is not the Dick Van Dyke show. One over here, one over there. It's not what God's plan was in marriage. And that's important to understand. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 3. The husband should give to his wife her congenial rights, and likewise the wife to her husband. Verse 4. For the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. I don't know if that can get any clearer. And here's what it says in verse 5. Do not deprive one another, except perhaps by agreement for a limited time, that you may devote yourselves to prayer. Then come together again, so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. God has ordained. The minute you say, I do, you're not just saying, I'm moving in the same house. You're saying, I do. I consent to a physical relationship with you and you with me. That's part of what marriage is about. Now, look at it this way. The husband has promised the wife to be faithful to him, and she has promised to be faithful to her. But what happens if you cut your husband off sexually? Where does he go? What does he do? It's a very dangerous position to find yourselves in. And when you get married, part of the package is sex. Years ago, my wife and I were attending a seminar, how to deal with difficult people. And at the beginning of the seminar, the instructor made us all stand up and give some information about ourselves. And so I stood up and I mentioned that I was a pastor and sat down. At the lunchtime, as I'm leaving, hoping to have a quiet lunch with my wife, this woman is saying, hey, whoa, don't go away, I need to see you. You're a pastor, aren't you? I need to see you, I need some advice. And I'm thinking, oh, there goes my lunch. So we now had a threesome. We're sitting around a table, and this woman says to me this, She says, I've been married for 10 years. I've given my husband 3 children. We've had sex for 10 years. I want to go home and tell him, you've had your 10, I need 10 off. The first thing that occurred to me was, my wife is hearing this. I can't believe that my wife is hearing this. This could be the most tragic of times. I couldn't believe it. So she's saying, what do you think, Pastor? What do you think? I said, ma'am, after sharing a few things about love and marriage, I think if you continue on the path you're on, you're going to be a divorced woman. I don't know any man that will make a 10-year deal like that. Thank you. And then when we went back, I made sure that my wife didn't sit near her, lest it's contagious. I thought, Proverbs 5:15, drink water from your own cistern, flowing water from your own well. God encourages this. Verse 18, let your fountain be blessed and rejoice in the wife of your youth. It goes on to say in verse 19, a lovely deer, a graceful doll, let her breast fill you at all times with delight and be intoxicated always in her love. That does not sound like 10 years off to me. I thought, this is what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a relationship that is enduring and wonderful and holy and blessed by God. Now, husbands, I'm going to give you a little clue here. Sex begins in the morning in the kitchen. What do you mean? I mean, if you get up grouchy in the morning, don't expect a great evening. If you complain in the morning and you're grumping all the time, and then you say to your wife, what do you think? Forget it. Forget it. Listen, sex begins. I have a 3-kiss goal every morning. My wife and I roll out of bed. We make the bed together. I go in and make her tea. I want to get a kiss in between. By the time she leaves, I'm up to 3. And I open the door. I get her car. I put her lunch in the car. Listen, sex begins in the a.m. If you understand that, because you see, men can turn on in 2 minutes, maybe less. Women need a little wooing. And if you give them woe in the morning, forget the woo in the evening. Yeah, write that down. So it's important that you understand we're different and that you respond accordingly. Next week we're going to talk about what should take place in the bedroom. We'll spend a little more time there. You've had enough for 1 week. Honor, outward appearance, unity, sexual fulfillment, and then encouragement. Proverbs chapter 21, verse 9. It is better to live in a corner of the housetop than in a house shared with a quarrelsome wife. Ladies, don't tell your husband all the things that are wrong with him. Most men carry a weight of responsibility about them. They don't need the added pressure of being told they're not getting it right. And they get it right when you honor them. But when you belittle them, you find that they respond very negatively. And it's very important for us to learn that. Behind what is commonly called male anger is really often a sense of frustration with the man because he wants to do right and often struggles. I know that encouragement is a great thing. When I left Illinois and resigned my church there, I was discouraged. I thought I was a failure as a pastor. I came to Millville, New Jersey, because I had a 2-bedroom mobile home. We moved our 4 daughters, my wife, myself, our dog, in that 2-bedroom mobile home. I started looking for jobs to do, selling cars, delivering furniture, you name it. I was discouraged. But never once in that time did I ever sense my wife was not with me. Never once did I ever sense that she was not an encouragement to me. And that's an important thing. And if you go through difficulty, you need to know that your wife is encouraging you. You remember, Les Miserables, I dreamed a dream. Now the life has killed the dream I dreamed. But the tigers come at night with their voices soft as thunder as they tear your hopes apart, as they turn your dreams to shame. And sometimes guys struggle because they've lost their job. They aren't able to provide the way they thought. They've promised you a picket fence and a beautiful house and all these things, and you find yourself struggling and sometimes barely able to pay the bills. What do? Encourage him. Encourage him. And you will find that he'll rise up. And he'll do amazing things with just a little bit of encouragement. Proverbs 21:19, it is better to live in a desert land than with a quarrelsome and fretful woman. I led a guy to the Lord many years ago. I hadn't met his wife yet. After I led him to the Lord, I met his wife, and she was the most complaining, difficult woman I'd ever met. 3 months later, he suddenly died of something like a heart attack. And I kept thinking, God delivered this man. I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but God, I never met a woman that could complain so much. And I thought, God, you took him to heaven and spared him. Someone has said that wives are the opposite of fishermen. They brag about the ones that got away and complain about the ones they caught. Don't do that. Encourage him. Most men, you may not know, are domestically challenged. And it takes a while for them to be aware of things that you're aware. Like, did you see that on the floor? No, I didn't. You know, and little things like taking the laundry down so your wife doesn't have to take it down, emptying the dishwasher. It takes a little while for some men to learn some things. Guide them along the way. You'll be surprised that they are trainable and they can get better. Help them. Sometimes they're just tired. And I've worked a number of jobs, sheet metal mechanic, tool and die maker, electrician, bill collector, washing machine repairman. I know what it is to go to work. I know what it is to work hard and be unappreciated. And sometimes they come home and they're just discouraged. And you need to encourage them. And the more you encourage them, the better they'll do. Proverbs 31:12, she does him good and not harm all the days of his life. And that's a really, really important thing. She does him good and not harm all the days of his life. Encourage him. A good wife makes a good husband. Encourage him. Now, let me tell a little story here. There's a couple going to his wife's celebration of how many years of college, or the reunion, or rather it may have been high school. And they needed gas, and they pull up to a gas station, and the guy starts pumping the gas, and as the husband's in the car, the wife gets out and starts talking to the guy pumping the gas. The husband thinks, this is really unusual. My wife usually doesn't get out of the car and talk to the gas station attendant. And then she gets back in, and so he's a little curious. What is that? Oh, that's a fella I used to date when we were in high school. And we just caught up on some things. Oh, this husband, who was the president of a company, sort of puts his chest out and says, aren't you glad you married me, the president of a company? Honey, she said, if I had married him, you'd be pumping gas and he'd be the president of a company. That's what a wife can do. Years ago, one of the guys in our church got a job. He was doing mechanical work and he's making half decent money, but someone saw some potential in him and wanted to hire him to sell. And so he quit this good job and took this sales job. Have you ever started out in sales? I could tell you that you sit there and you wait for the phone to ring. You just pray for the phone to ring. And he was very discouraged. A couple weeks in, he's not doing much with the sales, and he feels like an absolute failure. I made a major mistake. I'm going to let my family down. And then the phone rings. Hello? And then he hears his wife on the other line, on the other side. Honey, I just called to pump you up. Go kill him. Make a sale. You know, he became a very successful salesperson. Isn't that the kind of wife a guy looks for, that will pump him up, that'll stand behind him, know that there's a transition taking place, know he needs to be discouraged, and yet she'll encourage him? How many of you are old enough to remember Tammy Wynette? Oh, good. There are some of us old enough. My mother was a country and western fan, and so I grew up on this kind of music. But she had a great song, Stand By Your Man. Yeah. Here's what it said. Sometimes it's hard to be a woman, giving all your love to just one man. You have bad times, and he'll have good times, doing things you don't understand. But if you love him, you'll forgive him, even though he's hard to understand. And if you love him, oh, be proud of him, because after all, he's just a man. Then the chorus. Stand by your man, give him 2 arms to cling to, and something warm to come to when nights are cold and lonely. Stand by your man and show the world you love him. Keep giving all the love you can. Stand by your man. That's what husbands need. That's what makes your marriage stronger and better. Let's pray together. Lord, help us to stand by one another and help the ladies to stand by their man. And in the moments of difficulty and hardship, stand by and build that house. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you, and God bless you.